Talking about whitewater rafting, so, well, let's just jump in. So this is a raft. It's one of the key components to whitewater rafting. We'll talk more about this later. This is whitewater, the other key component to whitewater rafting. What makes whitewater white, if you're curious, is that there's actually air in the water, right? So when water goes over rocks or other things, when it gets moved and pushed around, air enters the mixture and it turns it from that normal blue color into white. That's where we get the term whitewater. So there's a few different things that create rapids, and rapids are what make whitewater rafting fun. The first one is gradient. What that means is it's the change in elevation from the top of the rapid to the bottom, right? All rivers flow downhill. And so when some are pretty slow, they don't, it's a very short change in elevation. Others, like waterfalls, right, it's a big change, right? Up here is really tall, down here is really short. So that is, you need some gradient to create a rapid, but you don't want too much, otherwise it becomes a little too dangerous. The second thing you need is obstacles. Usually these are rocks. Sometimes these are things put in the river by people that shouldn't have been messing with them. I've seen various cars in rivers. There's a legend of a boxcar from a train in this one rapid on the Deschutes River. So anything can be an obstacle, but most of the time it's just rocks. And then the third thing is we need constriction. And constriction means that the river gets narrower, right? If the river is very wide, then the water can just spread out and there won't be any rapids. It will just be very flat still. So in various combinations, those three things create every rapid that exists in the world. All of those things then combine to create different classes of rapids. And rapids internationally are classified 1 to 6. They're classified on the amount of water. Generally, more water makes the rapid more difficult, makes it stronger, harder to work against the water. So you need to be more careful that way. It's also based on the difficulty, right? So how hard it is to get through the rapid. There's a lot of different rocks and obstacles in the way. It can be very difficult to move between those, and it gets very dangerous that way as well. And then the last thing, which is actually the most important, is the consequences, right? Because a lot of water or a high difficulty, those things don't matter that much if there's no consequence, right? Sometimes the worst thing that a lot of water can do is flip your raft and you go swimming, right? But if there's no rocket down there for you to, hit, it's fine. You're just swimming, like in a pool. But if there is a rock, then it gets very dangerous. The water might actually push you up against that rock, which, is not great. And so like I said, they're 1 to 6. Class 1 is basically, flat water. Anything where there is flow, but you might not even see that flow. Class 2, that's when you start to get a little bit of gradient change, right? A little bit of maybe rocks in the way. It's going to be, kind of fun and splashy, but still very low consequence. Class 3 is usually what we consider kind of the bread and butter of whitewater rafting, right? So this is the most fun part. This is where, yes, the consequences go up a little bit, but with that, the difficulty goes up, and the water level goes up, and this is where you get sort of those traditional fun sort of rapids with all the splashes and all the water. This is, the consequence isn't too high yet to the point where you really need to worry, but it is there a little bit, and that's what makes it fun. Class 4 then, of course, we're just increasing the, we're increasing the consequences, we're increasing the risk, and for some people that also increases the amount of fun. Class 5, still keep going up and up. This is where, one mistake can really actually be pretty problematic, right? One mistake is going to lead to really bad things happening, possibly even fatal things. And then class 6 is what is considered commercially unrunnable. So that means that it's too dangerous that no company will ever take you. Like if you contact somebody like, hey, I want to do that rapid, like that company will be like, no, we're not going to do that. You can still try it on your own. The reason I say it's commercially unrunnable is that, especially in the US, everything is controlled by lawyers, and so it's all about like negligence and like, are you taking appropriate risks? But if it's you and your friends, you're like, yeah, well, let's give it a try, see what happens. You can, but not necessarily a great idea. And there are a few different things that make up other elements of rapids. So the first one, and this is what a lot of Class 3 rapids look like, they're just a wave train. And a wave train is where you have a bunch of waves in a row, right? If you've been to the ocean, or if you've seen any wave in the world, right, it's a bunch of those in a row. So you go up one, down that one, up and down, up and down. Super fun. We like to say that friendly waves have friends, right? So if it's a wave that you want to hit, that you want to, be splashed by, it has other friends behind it that will also splash you. If it's a singular wave on its own, it's usually what we call a hole. So from a side view, you get sort of a rock in the water, something like that, and the water is coming over the top of this rock. As it goes over the rock, it comes down and it drives down deep into the water on the backside, and that causes it to recirculate like this, right? And these look, like standard waves you might think of, like for surfing and things like that. And some of these are great. Some of these you really like that recirculation. You can actually put your raft or your kayak in there so you can hang out and surf all day. But sometimes they're really dangerous because that recirculation, especially if you're just a person, can actually put you all the way down to the bottom and you just keep staying in there, almost like a washing machine, which isn't ideal. So those you need to sometimes be careful with. Then we've got eddies. And eddies are kind of the opposite, right? So a hole circulates vertically. An eddy recirculates horizontally. Another type of washing machine. We'll ignore that picture. We can look here, right? So this is like big eddy rock. The water comes down towards it, and then it's forced around that rock. And what happens behind the rock is there's a vacuum. And the vacuum sucks the water back up, and then it creates, like I said, that horizontal recirculation. So the water comes down here, and then it's sucked back up, and it recirculates and recirculates. This can happen on the side of the river as well, sort of like this picture. And what I love about this picture is this is, real water moving, but you can see through the bubbles and the sort of debris in there how it's recirculating. You've got that great sort of circular motion happening. I feel like I've said circular. Of course, there's waterfalls as well. Those are key features to rapids, to some rapids. Most people look at a waterfall and they say, that's probably not safe. And then there's all of my friends who do this job as well, and they're like, that looks fun, let's do that. So not all waterfalls are actually that dangerous. Really what makes a waterfall dangerous is what happens once you hit the water. And sometimes what's happening in the waterfall itself. Like if it's not like a great waterfall and you hit a bunch of rocks on the way, like not an ideal waterfall to take a boat over. But this one, right, you can get enough speed and momentum that you just come off of it and you hit the water and it's a nice pool and it's awesome to do. So there are plenty of safe waterfalls. In fact, one guy even took an inflatable lobster. He just went to Kmart, bought a lobster, blew it up with his mouth, and then held onto it and went over a 70-foot waterfall. Don't know why, just thought it was a good idea. So, not all waterfalls are dangerous. There's a few different types of rafting out in the world. Different ways you can go down the river. Most people think of rafting as paddle rafting. So that's where you've got one guide, usually up to 6 paddlers. And those paddlers, you get 2 in the front, 2 in the middle, 2 in the back. Here we only have 4 paddlers. Don't know why that was happening that day, but so the guide is really just there to steer. All of the people up in front, the other 6 paddlers, are there to provide the power, the momentum, to make the raft actually move. And what's key here, one of my pet peeves as a raft guide, is when people say, when they have a paddle, and they're like, we're just rowing. No. If you have a paddle, you're paddling. If you have an oar, then you're rowing. So this is the other main type of raft out on the water, is what we call an oar rig or an oar boat. Some version of that phrasing. So basically, the main difference here is that your raft, this nice inflatable piece of plastic, now has a big metal frame on top of it, and that frame holds oars. Right? These big yellow things here, the yellow ones there, these ones are black on a yellow boat. And also, right, instead of the guide being at the back of the boat, now the guide is in the middle of the boat. And the guide is doing everything. The customers, any guests you have, they just hang out on the boat, have a great day, take a nap, catch some sun rays, whatever they want to do. What these are great for is putting a lot of stuff on there. I don't have a great photo of it here. You can start to see how behind me in this photo, there's like a mountain of stuff. And that's what we do with these oar boats, is we just pile all of the stuff we need for however long we're going to be out there. So if it's a 6-day trip, you need 6 days worth of stuff, put it on the oar boat, and then one guide will just row all day, bring it all down for you. You might be able to tell this white piece here that I'm sitting on, that's a cooler, right? And there's another one here. So we bring all of our food with us as well, of course. So all of the food for 4, 5, 6 days, we sit on it, just to make sure it's nice and secure, nice and safe. So the idea, is with an oar rig you can have a lot more stuff. Then there's also what we call a stern assist. Some people will call it a paddle assist. Basically, this is where we're taking the paddle raft we already talked about, the oar raft we already talked about, and we're smashing them together. So you've got 6 paddlers up front still, but the guide sits in the back with oars. This is actually my favorite way of doing things. The reason for that is the oars provide you a lot more power and a lot more control. Right? That's why they're great for having a lot of heavy stuff on the boat. You need all that power, you need all that control. But in this type of boat, the only weight you have is the weight of your paddlers. And paddlers, unless they ate a really heavy breakfast, don't weigh that much. Right? And so this is basically a race car. Because not only do they not weigh much, but they're also paddling. Right? You're like, all forward, and they dig in, and they paddle, and you're just like, whoa! Holy crap, it's much faster than you realize, and it's super fun, because you still have a lot of control. You can do everything if you need to, right? I don't need these 6 people to participate. I let them participate because it's more fun. And so they paddle, and we go super fast, and it's awesome and great. So yeah, like I said, my favorite way of doing it. Now we're going to get into a few other things. There's dories. These are traditionally used as fishing boats. People who really like to fish really like dories. The reason is they sit kind of flat on the water, and they're really easy to keep in one place, right? So if you enter an eddy, one of those recirculating pools, you can just hang out there, cast your line, just go fishing all day. And lots of fishermen really love them. And these can be made of wood, fiberglass, or aluminum, right? So most rafts are some sort of plastic material, which means when they hit a rock, they just kind of bounce off of it, and it's fine. These boats, they hit a rock, they break, right, and they sink, and it's less than ideal, to say the least. But they're also super maneuverable. These are, if the stern assist is kind of like the muscle car that goes super fast, these are sort of I don't even know exactly what to say. Like kind of like a unicycle, because they can go wherever they want, right? They're not limited by anything. They just go wherever they want in the water. Super maneuverable, really great. But have an element of risk to them in that. A lot of people who do whitewater rafting also really enjoy whitewater kayaking. I myself am not one of those people. But every single multi-day trip, I'll get into what a multi-day trip is in a second, we bring inflatable kayaks for people. So these are just, same material as the raft, pump them up the same way, but now our customers get to go out and have their own adventure. Right? We put them in the kayak, and we're like, good luck, we'll see you at camp. No, I mean, we give them directions, we tell them kind of how to do it. You can have 1 or 2 people versions of them. This is a 2-bladed paddle, gives you a lot more control, much better, super fun. This photo down here, she's in a hard shell kayak, what we call a hard shell kayak. So that's made of plastic. So all of the really professional sort of kayakers, all of the real enthusiasts for whitewater kayaking, they use the plastic boats. What's great about these is that you don't fall out of them, right? So an inflatable version, if you go over a wave, you maybe go over sideways and you fall into the river, now you're swimming, right? Maybe it's what you want, maybe it's not. In a hard shell kayak, when you flip over, you then just take your paddle and you roll back up, and now you do sort of this motion, and woo, magic happens, and now instead of being upside down like you were, you're back right side up, and you can keep paddling. It's much more efficient, it's a lot easier to keep going, and really it's actually quite fun. Then the last thing we've got here is catarafts. So a cataraft, it's similar to a catamaran, which is a type of sailboat. The idea is you have 2 pontoons, or 2 inflatable pieces, that are connected in the middle, right? So most of the time it's a metal frame, sometimes it's a wooden frame. And these are actually 2 very different styles, right? So this, over here, that photo, is more like the cataraft you're going to find in the US, right? It's going to be a metal frame, it's going to be loaded down with a bunch of gear, and you're going to have oars on it. Over here, these 2 photos are actually Russian, right? So in Russia, the more common thing is to take your catarafts. You're going to use a wooden frame. You're not going to put anything on the frame itself. All the stuff and people go on the pontoons, the tubes part, and then you use paddles. And I don't fully know why Russians do this, but I do know that this is kind of the preferred method of Russian rafting. I've read that it is the most stable, the least likely to flip. I have yet to try it out myself, so I can't say for certain. But yeah, I think it's kind of interesting to see that, Americans, we like our stuff, so we're going to bring it all with us. Russians are like, we like suffering, we're not going to bring anything with us. A quick history of rafting. So the first ever recorded attempt at rafting came in 1811. And I put rafting in air quotes because they didn't have rafts like we know them today, right? It was definitely a wooden boat or boats, and it was nothing like the rafts we have now. But in 1811, somebody tried to go down the Snake River, which is in Montana or Wyoming? Maybe both? I forget exactly where the Snake is. It's also in Idaho. It's everywhere. I don't know where they were. In the 1840s, Lieutenant John Freeman and Horace H. Day, they did invent a sort of rubber raft. Right? They were able to make something that looks more like what we're used to with rafts nowadays. But it still didn't really do much for rafting. It didn't start rafting at all. Then in 1869, the most badass man I've ever heard of decided to bring an expedition down through the Grand Canyon. So the Grand Canyon, the Colorado River runs straight through the Grand Canyon, and it is one of the most famous rivers for rafters. Every rafter dreams of doing the Grand Canyon. And John Wesley Powell was the first one to do it. They were super ill prepared for their journey. They didn't expect the level of rapids they were going to experience. These guys were familiar with the Mississippi and the Missouri. These are really big, wide rivers that have no gradients, no obstacles, just flat, super easy rivers. So they brought boats designed for those rivers. Like, oh, we'll just row down, it'll be fun, hang out, eat some hardtack, it'll be great. And then they get to the Grand Canyon, which is renowned nowadays for its rapids. And they're like, huh, we didn't think this through. And suffice it to say, disaster struck. Most of their boats were ruined with every single rapid, and they weren't trying to go through the rapids. They would actually put ropes on them, and from the shore they would hold onto the ropes and just slowly lower their boats through, which meant they hit every rock, and they had a lot of holes, and so every night they were repairing their boats, and it took them way longer than they thought it would, and they started to run out of food, but somehow, some way, they did actually make it. All but 3 people survived the journey. And not what makes John Wesley Powell the most badass person I know of, I've ever heard of. It's a little hard to tell, but he's actually only got one arm. Right? So you can only see his left hand there. That's because that's the only hand he had. He lost the other one serving in, I think, the Civil War. So he lost his right arm in the Civil War, and then he's like, hey, I can lead a bunch of guys down the Grand Canyon. That's fine. It wasn't until 1896 that Nathaniel Galloway kind of changed the name of the game for rafting and for going down rivers. Most of the time, I think if you've ever seen like crew or rowing, like competitive rowing, right, they face this way, but the boat travels this way, right? Because you get more power if you can use your legs to really row. So that's what everybody was used to. This guy Nathaniel Galloway, he's like, if I go this way, I can't see what's happening. And so he's like, why don't I go this way? Huh, now I can see that rock I'm about to hit. This is easier, this is safer. So that kind of changed everything. But still, rafting didn't catch on, right? For most people, it was still way too dangerous. It wasn't until June 9th, 1940 that the first commercial rafting trip happened. This guy, Clyde Smith, went back to the Snake River. He actually took some customers. They paid him to go down the river. I don't know exactly how well that went, but it was good enough that in the 1950s, John D. Rockefeller, really rich guy, bought the Grand Teton Lodge, and he started using surplus war rafts. So these rafts that were invented by these guys for war, for combat, they were sold by the government, and John D. Rockefeller bought them and started bringing people down the river. Those rafts were 8 feet wide and 27 feet long, or 2.4 by 8.2 meters. Right, so these were really big rafts, much bigger than we use nowadays. And I think, I don't know for sure, but I believe they were using motors on the back of those as well, just to make things easier for themselves, which nowadays is frowned on. And then in the 60s and 70s, people really then started to catch on. They really kind of figured out, okay, this is a real business we can do. Looked very different from what it does now, but they started to figure it out. Companies started to form. It caught on a little bit more in 1972 when rafting was in the Olympic Games in Munich. I think it was in the 72 Olympics and the 76 Olympics. And then the Olympics were like, nobody really cares. This isn't that much fun. And I took it out, and it's never been in the Olympics since. There is kayaking and canoeing, but very different sports. And then in the 1980s, there's this movie called Deliverance. And Deliverance, it's kind of a scary movie. I haven't seen it myself. I thought it was a comedy. and then I learned it wasn't, and I was like, I'm not going to watch this. But Deliverance had a bunch of whitewater in it, and it kind of inspired a bunch of people to be like, that looks fun. I could do that. And so that's when rafting really started to grow in popularity. It was in the 1980s, and it's just been getting more popular ever since. And then, I don't remember exactly when it happened, but at some point they designed self-bailing boats. So the original rafts, they were great, they were awesome, but they were basically floating buckets, right? Water would enter them, but water couldn't leave them, which was kind of problematic because theoretically they could fill enough and the whole thing would sink. Eventually somebody just figured out that if we put air into the floor and we put holes between the floor and the sides, then the water will come out, which sort of really revolutionized the game. It made rafting a lot easier because now you only need one guide per boat, right? The guide can do whatever, the water just lets itself out. Before the invention of what we call self-bailing rafts, somebody had to sit there and literally scoop water out. Can I stop yet? And then another wave would hit and be like, nope, gotta keep going. So that really changed the game. And that's most of what gets used today are self-bailing rafts. Most people like the convenience. There's a few different things. You've got commercial rafts, which means there's a company, you're paying them. And then you have private trips. And so private trips are just when a bunch of friends get together and like, let's go rafting. Depending on the river, sometimes you need a permit, but still, it's just a bunch of friends going down the river. Otherwise, you need, and if you can't get a permit on your own, then you need to go with the company. You pay them, they have the permit, they bring all the stuff. It's a lot easier for you. And then there's also the difference between day trips and multi-day trips. So a day trip is usually when you're going to have that paddle raft, where you're going to participate a lot, because it's just one day, or maybe half a day. You get out there, have as much fun as you can in 2 to 5 hours, and then you say, thank you, sir, and they go home, you go home, it's a great day. And then you've got multi-day trips, and these are anywhere between, 2 to 14 to 26 days. If you're out on the Grand Canyon. And that's where you need these bigger rafts with all the stuff in them. You camp out along the river. This is a photo my dad took of me. My preferred way of sleeping on the river is I bring a cot, I set it up, get on top of it, and I fall asleep. Other people prefer tents. I find it's not worth the effort. So a few different places I worked. I started my rafting career with my college. It was Lewis and Clark College, and they have this really great college outdoors program, which helps get students all into the wild in Washington and Oregon, kind of in this area around Portland, where the college is located. So I started running trips for them on the Deschutes River, which is this one, and that led me to get a job with Oregon River Experiences. And this is actually a photo from Oregon River Experiences. This is the 10 rivers that company runs. I worked, 3.5 years with that company. And in that 3.5 years, I did 9 of the 10 rivers here. The only one I didn't do was the John Day River. And it was super awesome. It was a really great opportunity. These 10 rivers, half of them are just day trips. There's no place to camp. It's not really a way to do more than one day on the river. And then the other half are multi-day trips. And for the most part, as a guide when you're first starting out, you go to guide school, which is where they teach you how to raft. They're like, this is a boat, this is how the boat goes down the river. Try not to kill anybody. And then you start doing day trips. Just because most every guide wants to do multi-day trips. They think it's more fun, they enjoy it more. So you need to, prove that you're good enough, prove that you know how to handle customers before they'll let you do it. So I spent most of my first 2 seasons on the Clackamas River, just outside of Portland. sometimes we went down to the North Santiam River quite a bit. I did a few trips on the Mackenzie and the North Umpqua, and then, you know, 1 or 2 on the Deschutes. And that was basically the summer. And then in my second year, I got to do a trip down on the Rogue River, and, well, 2 trips down on the Rogue and 1 trip on the Lower Salmon River. And those are both multi-day rivers. The Rogue is usually a 4-day trip. The Lower Salmon is a 5 or 6-day trip. And they're awesome. They're stunning, right? You're out there and you're just, you know, rowing downstream, rafting. It's awesome. It's great. Then in my fourth year, I started doing more multi-day trips with Oregon River experiences. Then in my 4th year, this company, ORE, is what they're known as, they didn't have much work for me. They didn't have many of those multi-day trips that I really wanted to do, that I felt I had earned. So I moved on to work with Momentum River experiences. And week after week, I was just out on the Rogue River, and it was awesome. It was beautiful and fantastic. So, like I said, the main day trip river I did was the Clackamas River. It's, in total, the day trip is, I think it's 13 miles, but about 11 rapids. You can see all of them named here. I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about a couple of my worst trips. Because rafting's awesome, it's super fun, but it also can be really hard. So one time, we were doing this trip, there was this camp from Minnesota. They do this big, long, northwest trip every year, and they come and do 2 days of rafting with us. And it was the girls that were with us this particular day on the Clackamas. And we started, where did we start? We started down about here-ish, just below Powerhouse, basically. And, you know, the first, you know, part of the day was fine, it was all good. Wait, there's a rapid missing here. Eventually we get to about here. There's a rapid called Superman. And right above Superman, it's not a big deal. I don't even know, like, there's just a rock. And yes, the water pushes into the rock, but it's really slow, and you shouldn't hit it. But one of our guides did hit it, and, right, the raft got a hole. So it started there. We had to, you know, pull over, slap some duct tape on it, you know, pump it back up a little bit. We couldn't put enough duct tape to prevent air from still leaking, so he was, you know, constantly pumping his boat the whole way down, which was a fun experience for him. We were all just laughing. And then somewhere, I don't know where exactly it happened. I think it was maybe at Roaring River. A different guide had a couple of girls fall out of the boat, which is never ideal, but usually it's okay. And one of them, she hit her thumb on something, and so now her thumb is hurting. And we're like, well, that's not great. But there wasn't a lot we could do at that point. We're like, okay, we're close, let's just make it to lunch at Fish Creek, and then we'll figure everything out. So we get to lunch. The owner of the company is there. He's like, okay, so you have a hole in one boat, and you've got a girl with a busted thumb. Great. See, it's going awesome. And so he helps, you know, patch up the boat. He puts better duct tape on it so that it'll hold more air. And we decide to send the girl with the hurt thumb out. She gets in the van with one of the counselors, and they go and get in their van and drive to the hospital to check out the thumb. You know, we want to make sure she's okay. She's also just not having fun because her thumb hurts. So we, you know, do the rest of the trip. The rest of the trip is fine. You know, homeboy's still pumping his boat. It's awesome. And so we get down to, it's not marked up here, but it's called, I forget, doesn't matter. We get to the end of the river, and we're at the takeout. And, you know, we're packing up everything, and we're hanging out with the girls. And then we realize that they're not leaving. We're like, what's going on? Like, trip's over, like, go home, like, or go to camp, you know, leave. Like, we're done with you. And then we find out they can't leave because they had, I think, 4 vans, and there were only 2 of them there because before the day even started, 2 of the counselors went to the hospital because one wasn't feeling well. Which, okay, that's fine, you know. They were going to come back, meet us at the end, pick everyone up. That's cool. Then at lunch, right, we sent another counselor with one of the students because she had a hurt thumb. Okay, so now 2 of the 4 vans are gone. That's, you know, not great, but they should be coming back. It'll be okay. And then we learned that the counselor who left at lunch took the keys for the other 2 vans. So now they're just like sitting here, can't get into their vans. They just, honestly can't do anything. They're just kind of stranded. And we felt really bad. We felt bad. We tried to help. We tried to call, you know, somebody, but there was really nothing we could do to help them. The reason we felt the most bad, though, is we couldn't get tipped if they couldn't get into their vehicles. So that's really what we were after. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, we cared. But eventually, yeah, we just kind of had to leave them. It was like this weird moment of like, huh, I hope everything's okay, but I don't know. So that was I think the worst trip I ever had. And then another bad one is we had a girl. This was a church group. They were Mormons from the Church of Latter-day Saints, and you know the whole trip's going fine. Like no issues. It's all great and awesome. Until we get down to this rapid called Toilet Bowl, and you know the normal thing is you got to go all the way to the left to avoid some rocks. You know, you start left, and then you go more left, and then eventually you can cut back to the right to the middle and hit some big fun waves. And the water level was dropping. It was pretty good at that point in time, but some of those rocks that force you to go left were starting to appear. And one of the guys is like, I think I can make it. It'll be okay. So he doesn't go all the way left. He's like, just a little bit left. And he hits a bunch of the rocks, and at least one of his customers falls out of the boat. Right, now I'm already at the bottom, and I see this. I'm like, God damn it. Because that's the last thing you want. And so he gets down there. There was at least, there were a couple other people in the water. We go over, we help them, and, you know, everybody gets to shore, and then we realize not everybody got to shore. In fact, there's one girl who's still up, hanging out in the middle of the rapid. And her dad was in my boat. So he's like, are you going to do something? I'm like, yes, I'm going to try. So I grab what's called a throw bag. It's just a bag full of rope. It's a really important safety tool. And all of us guides, I think there were 4 of us that day, we all head up the river. One guide was still up top. He hadn't come through the rapid yet. The other 3 of us are, and so he's on the left side. The other 3 of us walk up the right side. And we all just go into rescue mode. Like, it's time to be the hero. Like, save the day. Like, grab the bag, throw the rope. It's going to be awesome. We don't communicate well, which isn't a good sign. And I get out there. I wade a little bit into the water because I see one guy, he throws his bag and just goes straight up into the air. It's like, that was a waste. So I try to get out to some rocks, try to get closer. I yell to her, I'm like, you know, is your foot trapped? Like, are you okay? That sort of thing. I'm like, okay, I'm going to throw a rope to you. Like, rope, catch the bag, we'll get you in. So I throw the rope out to her. She grabs the rope. I'm like, yes, she's saved. And then I realize, so I'm on a rock here, the shore is over here, and then there's water here. So now I have to walk through water, which isn't easy, while holding a rope with a person on the other end of it. I doubt any of you have tried this, but you might imagine it didn't work very well. And she lets go eventually, because all the water is just trying to pull her downstream. And so she swims the rest of the rapid. Which is like, you know, less than ideal. But it's okay. You know, she lives, it's fine. She's scared, but alive. A little cold, but alive. I don't even think she was hurt, so like, ultimately, not that bad. But yeah, the whole rest of the day was kind of ruined. We couldn't save that one. It's just, yeah, the day was over at that point. And so we just kind of tried to rush to the end of the river at that point, which didn't really work, and it was awkward for another 30 minutes. Yeah, so those were a couple of my worst stories. But a typical day is awesome. Typical day for a day trip. You wake up, usually like 6:30, 6:15, which for a bunch of people that really like to drink beer and stay up late is very early. You wake up, most people try to eat some breakfast, and then it's usually about 7:30 that you need to start packing, right? Because there's a lot of stuff you need to get. You need to get all of the paddles, the life jackets, the helmets, maybe wetsuits depending on the time of year, and then safety equipment, and then of course the rafts themselves. And then you put all of the rafts in what we call a stack, so you just stack them on top of a trailer, and you load up and you go drive to the river. Usually you meet the guests about 9:30. It takes a bit to get to the river, depending on how it works. And then you get there, finish getting everything ready, get everybody dressed up and looking pretty, give them a safety talk, and then you're on the water about 11. And if it's a half-day trip, you finish at about noon or so, maybe 1 o'clock-ish, and then you do another one of those. If it's a full-day trip, you raft down, and then you stop for lunch along the way, eat a nice, great sandwich, and then you keep rafting, and then at the end you're like, thank you very much, super nice to meet you, handshake, hug, whatever it is, and then goodbye. But the rafting is super fun, and it's great. And then after that, you're like, okay, load the boats back on the trailer, tie everything down, and then head back to the warehouse to clean everything up, which is a lot of dunking the life jackets in soapy water. You got to clean the plates and everything you used for lunch. A lot of cleanup, and then finally, you're done. About an hour later, maybe 6, maybe 7, depends on what time it is. And then for me, I would usually just eat dinner and go to bed because I'm tired. Because I have to wake up at 6:30 again. And then other people, we eat dinner, drink some beer, stay up late, and then wake up and do it again. That's a typical day trip. The Rogue River, this is a multi-day river. And a typical day for a multi-day looks a little different, right? So before the trip, you load all of the gear. You've got more gear, usually tents, usually sleeping bags, sleeping pads, coolers with food, all sorts of stuff. Still stack the boats, but now there's a bunch of stuff in the boats. Like all this stuff, including the puppy, so it gets put in the boats. And then, you do the rafting thing. So a typical day on a multi-day river, for a guide at least, looks like, still same time you wake up, about 6:15 or so. For me, it's like sun's up, I'm awake, I can't sleep can't sleep past the sun. And then, yeah, you do your thing for a little bit, but then basically you start making breakfast. Because breakfast needs to be eaten at 8. So that way everybody can, pack up their stuff, so that all of the stuff can go on the raft, right? You've got a bunch of tents and a bunch of, tables and chairs and things like that. All of that needs to go on the rafts. Because the rafts need to leave by 9:30, right? Depending on how you're doing it, you're going to send a runner, so that's one person that has most of the stuff. They go down to set up camp right away. That way you have a camp, and you roll everybody else, all the customers come in, they're like, oh, camp, like bedtime, let's take a nap. If you're not sending a runner, you still need to get out at 9:30 because the Rogue doesn't have a reservation, right? You can't call up and be like, I want this camp today, right? It doesn't work that way. You have to get there first to make sure that it's your camp. So you need to leave early to make sure you get that camp. And then, so then you raft, have fun, splash and giggle, have a great time, tell some jokes. Eventually, at some point, you're like, oh, I'm hungry, so you eat lunch. And then somewhere between 2:30 and 5, depending on the type of trip you're doing, depending on how fast you want to go, how concerned you are with getting into camp, you finally get to camp. Sometimes it's set up, sometimes it's not. So, you need to finish setting things up, maybe do dishes from lunch, things like that. And then maybe, if you're lucky, you get a little bit of a break at that point. Depends on a lot of different things. But if you're lucky, you get to hang out. You get to have a break. But your break isn't like, go take a nap, have a beer. Your break is maybe have a beer, but you're going to be talking with the guests, right? Because your job is to entertain them, to make sure that they're doing okay, having a great time. So you sit down, you hang out, you're like, Bob, Susie, how's it going? And you just chit chat until it's time. About 6, you need to start making dinner, because at 7 you need to eat dinner, because everything is about food. It's rafting and food. It's all that matters. You eat dinner and dessert, and then clean up, do the dishes, make sure everything is put away at night, so that way when darkness hits, you can go to bed. And that's the best time for me. Maybe see the stars for a little bit, and then you're like, nah, I've seen them enough. Because at least for me, it's always hot. It's 80, 90, 100 degrees Fahrenheit outside. So that's like 30-ish Celsius. And so it's hot, and you get really tired, and you need to just go to bed. A little bit about the food. The food is awesome. We bring so much food on these trips. It's a bit ridiculous. We have these great 4-burner stoves that run on propane, and we can create some pretty gourmet meals on those things. We always do sort of sandwiches for lunch, just to spread. Everybody, makes a hand sandwich. So you put the bread in your hand, stack it up high with everything you want, put another slice on top, and then you just munch down on it. One of my favorite tools is this guy here. This is called a Dutch oven. And it's awesome. It's made of cast iron, super heavy, which is why you wouldn't take it backpacking, when you're concerned about weight. But it's awesome. You can start coals, you put some coals underneath, put some coals on top, and it literally bakes things like nothing. I've made some pretty good carrot cake before. I've made brownies before, right? It's awesome. It just bakes things for you, and it's fantastic. But the food is amazing. We always try to make it as gourmet as possible. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that. So now I want to talk a little bit real quick about a couple of different rapids. So the first one is Rainy Falls here. Rainy Falls, also Rainy Falls. This is my drawing of Rainy Falls. I know it doesn't look exactly the same. But basically Rainy Falls, there are 3 ways to get down Rainy Falls. You've got the actual waterfall itself, right? It's called Rainy Falls because it is about an 11-foot waterfall. I don't recommend that. I've heard of people actually doing that. It sounds painful to me, so I don't like it. So that really leaves you 2 options. And those 2 options are the middle chute or the salmon ladder, the fish ladder rather. So middle chute, fish ladder. And the middle chute, it's a little, it's a chute. It's not very, it's about as wide as the boat itself. And you have to enter and then make this nice left-hand turn, and then you hit 3 different drops. If you do it perfectly, it's easy, it's awesome, it's super fun and great. If you don't do it perfectly, you hit the regular falls and you die. No, probably not die, but it's not fun, definitely swimming. Or you get stuck somewhere up here in the rocks. The fish ladder, it's similarly difficult to get into, but what's awful about it is how narrow it is. It's very narrow. There's not a lot of water, and once you get in it, you just kind of bounce around and get jostled and jived, and sometimes your boat gets stuck, and that can be a pain in the butt to fix. I do have a couple of videos. I think I'll show the one of the middle chute here. So this is me. I'm going through the middle chute. So here's the actual main falls, big whitewater, dangerous death stuff. The middle chute, you're aiming for, these are the bottom rocks, these are the top rocks. There's a little tuft of grass that you're just pushing and pushing, rowing towards it. And then eventually you kind of come right upon it. There's your tuft of grass that you're looking for. And then, actually it's that one. Then you find the little chute here, put your oars up front so that they don't hit the sides and break. And then, 1, 2, and 3 drops. And then you're through, safe and sound. It's not super exciting, but it's pretty great when you're in it. And then there's me struggling to fight against the water. We're running a little low on time. This video is a lot more boring. It's a lot of waiting, and then you finally see me approaching. It's not that great. The other rapid I want to talk about is Blossom Bar, which this is my drawing for that. Blossom Bar is the most dangerous rapid on the Rogue River. Basically, you've got this, nice moon-shaped rock that you look through, and you're like, huh, that looks terrifying. What's so bad about it is there's a ton of different rocks. There's only one way to get through the rapid, and that is to go through what we call the beaver slide. That's this area here, right? It just slides right through, and it's awesome. This is what we call the picket fence. The picket fence, it's literally a fence, right? In the sense that water can get through it, boats and people can't, right? This is one of the few spots that people have really died on the Rogue River. So your goal is to catch this eddy here to get yourself into the beaver slide and down through the river safely. You start up in what we call purgatory up here. It's just this nice eddy, super calm. You look at it, you get in there, you can see all of Blossom Bar down below you, and you're like, this could be the day I die. And then the goal is to line up the back of your boat to this eddy, and you pull super hard, pull, because you're stronger that way. Catch the eddy, slide through, hit the beaver slide. Once you're down here, then you just play rock dodge. Try not to hit any rocks. These rocks are also dangerous, but less dangerous. So you're just trying to avoid them. Yeah. So here's a video of me running through Blossom Bar. So up here is Purgatory. This is me. I'm dropping into Blossom Bar right now. Here's the beaver slide. This is my goal. So I'm lining up for the eddy, and now I'm pulling super hard, pulling, and pulling. This is high water. It's easier at this level. Here's the picket fence. A lot of it is underwater, which is great. Makes it easier, less dangerous. And then, yeah, I hit that rock a little bit. That's fine. We're all good. And then I come over here. This is what we call picture eddy. I was lucky enough to catch that. Picture eddy, it's great because you can turn around, take pictures of your friends coming through, which is awesome. Yeah, that's enough of that. The rest of it's just me kind of hanging out. I want to compare that. It's going to get a little small, but you can see sort of this is, this area is the picket fence. This is, bigger photos of that. So here, lower water. So there's a friend of mine coming through. The boat, basically this area is basically the size of the raft at lower water, right? This rock, much bigger, much more pronounced, and all the water is just sending you right towards it. There's that same rock that I hit. She's going right over the top of it, but she's just fine, right? You can see as the water gets lower, these rocks get bigger and bigger, but there's still the same force of water pushing you towards them. So what's likely to happen, what can happen, and what happened to me once, is that I was trying to pull, and my boat got about here. This is my boat. It hit this rock, the front of it, and in 2 seconds we'd flipped over. Like, not even 2 seconds, in 1 second, really. It's the scariest moment of my life, because I see it coming. There's, for a split second I see that this is going to happen, that we're going to hit the rock. I'm worried about wrapping, which is where the boat, literally wraps itself onto the rock, and it's really hard to get it off of there. That's what I'm worried about. I don't even think about flipping in the moment. And then we hit the rock. We start going up. I see, my dad is here. No, sorry, my dad is here. My mom is here. My dad is here. Our family friend is here. And then I've got, another guide up in the front, sitting on the front, looking back at me. So we hit the rock. My dad is out of the boat instantly, basically. Our family friend, she's rushing to the side, trying to, prevent this death from happening. Doesn't work. And the last thing I see before I shut my eyes and I hit the water is you see my mom's like, ah! It was terrifying. Because I don't, these are some of the most important people in my life. I have no idea what's going to happen to them. Because now they're swimming through the most dangerous spot on this river. And so we flip over, and you know, I'm like, screw the boat, like, let's find the people. So I'm looking for them the whole time, trying to figure out where they are. I do see the other guide. Somehow he was like on the top of this rock. He somehow managed to just like be up there. I'm like, great, he's okay, that's fine. I eventually see everybody. I managed to find a rock down in this area. I get on top of that and I yell at them. I'm like, swim to shore, swim to shore. I see that everybody's alive. I see that they're, you know, probably going to make it to shore. And I'm like, okay, now it's time for the boat. Which if I'm here, you know, the boat's like down here at this point. So I jump in and start swimming after the boat. Thankfully, there is a bit more water after the end of the rapid where you can, you know, catch up. So I'm down there, got the boat, you know, in my hand, like trying to swim it to shore. Just, it doesn't work. Thankfully, there were some other people there that were able to help us out. So they helped us get the boat to shore. They helped us set up what's called a Z-drag, which I've drawn a terrible picture of it. But the idea is, you know, if the boat has a bunch of stuff on it, you're not going to be able to just flip it with your hands, right? It's too heavy for that. So you have to put a rope down to this side, or, you know, down to that side. That rope goes up to an anchor, then down back towards the boat, gets hooked up to the rope itself, and then you pull over here. What this does is it creates a mechanical advantage, gives you a 3-to-1 power. So every 1 unit of force you put in, you pull 3, which is great. Eventually it works. I would show you this video, but honestly it's not that great. My dad took this after we rescued him. He's sitting there, he has a broken collarbone because he hit something when we flipped over. He's got a broken collarbone, he's sitting there, you know, everybody's like doting on him, like, are you okay, are you okay, like, can we get you anything? I think I got him a beer, which I don't remember how I got a beer from this whole situation. I guess that was after we flipped it. Anyway, but yeah, so he's sitting there, he's like, I've got my, you know, phone, let me take a video of this. But it took a while to get everything set up, and so this is just sort of the setup. But the idea is that we're just, trying to flip the boat back over. If you do it with a paddle raft, this is just a paddle raft, then you don't need that same mechanical advantage, right? It's pretty light, it's easy, it's possible to pick it up by yourself. So in that case, you use either a flip line or a paddle, and it's the same concept. Put it up here, attach it to one side, your feet go on the other side, and you're literally pulling and falling into the water. And as you fall, your body weight flips it over, which you can see that I'm doing here. This might not have even worked. Sometimes it doesn't work, and you're like, just climbed on for nothing. Anyway, ultimately, this brings us to the point of like, Curtis, you told me a lot of different stuff. I understood half of it. Why do you like this? And it's not that I like it. I love it. I love being outside. These past few months being trapped in this building have been a great opportunity. Thank you. But they've, been a little soul crushing, to be honest. I love being outside. I love seeing these amazing places. I love the family that you get from working with these people. There's a lot of trust that goes into it. You have to trust that everybody that you're working with is going to be able to get their people down safely. And more importantly, you have to trust they can help you if you don't do that, right? You have to know that they've got your back, that they're there to help you. And it creates this really tight bond, and it's super awesome and super great. And really, they become more like brothers and sisters than just coworkers, which is super cool. It is fun, right? Like, it's fun to get splashed in the face. Or, for me, I'm sitting on the back, so it's more like a roller coaster, which I enjoy that part. I don't like water in my face. But other people do, and so it is fun. It's a lot of fun. But for me, it's even more so fun because of the challenge, right? Each new rapid is a problem to solve, right? You have to look at that and you have to say, I have no idea what's going on here. But somehow, I should be able to go through this rapid okay. So you have to find the line, find your route through it. That's a fun puzzle. Sometimes it doesn't work super great. and you get stuck or you find problems, but you always work through it, and it's super fun. I really enjoy the challenge of it. But most importantly, I love the people, right? I love my coworkers. They're super fun. They're great. We get awesome guests out on the river. You know, this is me and one of my friends. We're brushing each other's teeth, right? Why? Because we can. It's fun. Would highly recommend trying it with your friend. Or, you know, maybe your boyfriend or girlfriend. Like, it's a really good bonding experience. Promise, it's awesome. Another one, get a group of friends together, grab some floss, string it out nice and long. Everybody grabs their portion, right? Here to here. This is my zone. Not going to move my fingers because then I'm in your zone, right? And you get in there and you do what we call a group floss, right? Sounds gross. It's awesome. Really good bonding moment. Right, so that's what we're doing up here. Everybody's using one piece of floss. We're just having a great time getting to know each other. This is a spot on the Rogue River at Mariel Lodge. There's a few lodges along the river. They're awesome. They, you know, are an opportunity to just relax, have a bed for the night, which is amazing. And, you know, getting to hang out with some cool people, sharing some good stories up on the deck. Ultimately, you know, every person has a story. Every person is interesting, and I just appreciate how the river always brings us together, makes us a family, even if it's only for like 1 or 2 days. And there's nothing, even just talking right now, I'm like, man, I need to go rafting soon. So there's nothing better in the world for me. So, yeah, I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you for coming, everybody.
Thank you.